Hey there, welcome to 90% Knitting. This is episode 384 and I am Lisa, also known as Fiber Nymph. Today is Friday, February 25th, and we are at the end of what has been kind of a freaky week in a lot of ways, especially on the global front, maybe in other ways where you are too. I would just like to start by inviting you to just take a few minutes, even if you can't watch the whole episode. Just sit down, carve out a little bit of time, grab something to drink. I have my glass of water here. And just maybe give yourself a few minutes to decompress, because even though that's not going to solve all the issues in the world, we're always better equipped to deal with things when we've been able to just reset. So I hope you will take a little bit of time, even if you can't do it right now, maybe later today. Just take a few minutes. Take a deep breath, just kind of get your mind in a good place, and then go back out there and deal with whatever craziness you have to deal with, whether it's globally or locally or within your own house or within your own head. Just always remember to give yourself that little bit of breathing time. It makes a big difference in the long run. Anyway, I'm happy you're here with me today. And if you are a new viewer, thank you so much for checking the podcast out. If you have been around these many years or several of these years, I appreciate you coming back. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to show you some fun knitting stuff that I have. I have actually made some progress on things. It's been, let me tell you, it's been a couple of weeks. Locally, here in our house, oh my gosh, if you're on my newsletter or follow me on social media, you probably may have already heard that we had, oh, I just dropped my show notes, whatever. We had some plumbing issues, major like septic plumbing issues. We're in the mountains and we have a septic system, and when that does not work well, it's not a good thing. I will not go into all the details, but suffice it to say, we did finally solve the problem. Hopefully for the long term. I hope this does not flare up again in another month or two, because we just dealt with it back in December. Although my husband thinks that what we did in December actually just may have been a precursor, what we dealt with then, and that what we did then, even though it solved the problem then, maybe encouraged the problem more, because it's kind of like whenever you fix one thing, something else might happen because of a result of that. Anyway, things are working okay now. We can use our indoor plumbing again, which is always a wonderful thing. But I lost a week's worth of work time that I couldn't dye because we couldn't run water. Yeah, fun times. But here we are. This week has been good. I've been trying to play catch up and I'm still behind, but it's okay. I'm doing the best I can, and sometimes that is all we can do, and that is all right. I mentioned it last week, but I'll say it again. I do have a different website other than my Fiber Nymph Dye Works, my business site. I have a new website up called My Favorite Day. I don't have a lot of content on it, but I do have project pages on it. So that is an alternative place for you to go and look at the projects that I've been working on. I will be linking to those project pages as well as my Ravelry project pages for anything that I'm working on. That's my plan going forward. I did notice this week that the website is hard to access menus on mobile devices. If you go to a direct link, like from the show notes here, and go to a direct link, you'll be able to get to the project pages. If you're just going to the website on your phone, I assume maybe a tablet also. I don't have a tablet to check that out. There may be a problem. I'm working with my web guy to get that straightened out. But right now, just know that there are alternative links that you can go to if Ravelry is not accessible to you. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to show you my finished object, which I'm super excited about, and that was my February personal stash challenge that I was working through, and this is the shawl that I made with it. I know it's really big and it's hard to see the whole thing. I will insert some pictures here that I took of it. I'm super happy with how it turned out. So the yarn that was the stash challenge for me, was a mini set from Starcroft Fiber Mill. She specializes in Maine-based yarns, and so there was the 6 colors in the mini set, which was this very neutral color, which I'm assuming was undyed, and then there was a light green, a medium green, a dark green, blue, and brown. And I used some leftovers that I had in my stash of my Ridgetop DK in the wisp color. That's what all of the garter stitch sections are up until the very edge. This very edge is the undyed of the mini set. Okay, so that's what I used. The pattern that I used is the Zen Shawl pattern, which is written by Maureen Clark. And I don't know if she is from or it was for Green Mountain Spinnery, but it's a free pattern. It's available on Ravelry. I will link to it. I don't know if it's available directly from the Green Mountain Spinnery website. It may be. I'll try to see. I heavily modified this pattern. The pattern itself used far less yarn than I used, and because I think it used kind of a, I don't know if it was a striping or a gradient kind of yarn, but I wanted to do this in color blocks. So I did, again, I used my Ridgetop DK in Wisp for all these little garter sections, and then I just went through the minis. This is a stockinette panel that I used in the light, the undyed, and then this is a kind of a ribbed panel in the light green. This was a lace panel. And then this is sort of, I think, like a moss stitch. And then at this point, I stopped following the pattern. There were more textured panels after that. I didn't want to do any of those. The one I know was a big panel of like a fishnet lace, which I don't like that stitch. I'm never good at it. I always mess it up and it looks funny. And I didn't want to do a big open lace panel there. So instead, especially since I had small amounts of yarn to do it. So here I did a little tiny cable, just a twisted stitch. So it's actually a 2x2 rib, but for the stockinette portion I did a little twisted stitch cable. And then this section, I was super proud of myself that I remembered how to do this stitch because I've only ever done it once and it was in a project I never finished. It's that crossover, I think it's maybe called broomstick lace, although it's not actual broomstick lace because that's a thing. I don't know. But I did that and I really like how that turned out for that section. And then at the end, the pattern called for just doing like a picot bind off, and I did not want to do that. Plus I wanted to use as much of the yarn as I had as possible. So I still had, you know, a lot of mini yarn left. Well, not a lot, but I had enough to do this garter ridge border. So what I did, I kind of did a couple things before I landed on what I wanted to do. So I started doing the Ridgetop garter ridge. I was doing one of those and then using a mini to do a stockinette, 2 rows of stockinette, and then a garter ridge, and then 2 rows of stockinette. And I decided I didn't really like how that looked because I was also adding these slipped stitches, which were sort of getting lost in the stockinette. I mean, definitely here because the colors were so similar. So then I just switched and I did all of them, a single garter ridge. So it's 2 rows. Creates a ridge, and alternated the wisp Ridgetop with the mini yarn that I had left. And I really like how that turned out. And I did the slip stitch in a different place depending on whether it was with on a wisp row or a mini row. So that's why you can see it like that. And I love the effect that that turned out. I would love to incorporate that into something else sometime. And then at the very end, I ran out of my Ridgetop, but I still had some of the, what's that? Oh, that's just a fuzzy. I thought, do I have a snag? Oh no. I had enough of the undyed left, so I did my last 2 garter ridges and my bind off with that. And I did post a picture on Instagram showing that I played yarn chicken and I barely won because I ended up having to weave in a couple of my ends of that color earlier on in the shawl and cut them and then splice those ends to my very end so I could bind off the last 7 stitches. Craziness. But in the end, I had used all of the Ridgetop leftovers that I had, so all in the wisp. I used all of that, and I used all of the minis except for 5 grams total between all of those colors that I had. So I felt really good about that. I can't remember what my total weight was. I think it was close to 500, maybe 550. I don't remember. I might be off on that. But it ended up being a very big shawl, as you can see probably from the other pictures that I already showed you. I blocked it pretty aggressively, but it's super lightweight. I imagine, I don't know how I'll wear it. I mean, it's big enough that I can like definitely wrap it around me, you know, to snuggle up in. So it would be okay that way. It's a little short wingspan wise for that to be comfortable and have it stay on, but it's also a woolly, woolly yarn, so it's not going to just fall off like something silky. I don't know. Definitely could wear it like this. I definitely could wear it kind of bandana style or like kerchief style or something like that. Let's see. I could do this and then wrap this around and have the point over to the side. Yeah, I could do that. And that would be nice and warm, you know, to keep my upper back warm. I could wear it under a coat this way. Anyway, I think I'll get a lot of use out of it. And again, I'm just so thrilled with how it turned out, especially because I made so many modifications to the pattern. But it was fun, and I did not mess up my spine, that eyelet spine. A lot of times I'll miss an eyelet and that yarn over, and you can see it, and it's never quite the same if you go back and fix it after the fact. But anyway, turned out great. Very happy with it, and that's my second successful month at my personal stash challenge. So I'm 1/6 of the way there for this year. Next up, I have a half-finished object, and this is the pair of socks that I showed you last time, which is my anniversary colorway for this year. So this is the Follow Your Path colorway. This one's knit on my bounce base, and I finished the first sock. I do have the second sock almost to the point of starting the heel flap. So, you know, this isn't a project that I'm raring to get done anytime fast. It just sits out on the dining room table and I work on it, at mealtime or when we're done eating or whatever. So it's happening. But this is just a 2x1 rib sock, which is pretty much my favorite sock to make, with a heel flap and gusset. I did do some yarn management to get back in the flow of the pattern once I was done with the heel turn. And these are going to be for me. I held off on doing the toe for a while because I wasn't sure if I was going to make them for me or if I was going to give them to Emma or to Bill. But I decided, you know what? It's my anniversary colorway and I would like the socks. So this is my sock. And the other one will also be my sock whenever it's finished. So that is a half finished object. So when I talked to you last, I think I mentioned that I was hoping to be able to get my Granny Stripes cardigan done by the end of February. So that would be one big whip that I would have finished during my January-February whip down. And I realized that it wasn't going to happen because I did indeed knit the fronts and the back too high before I started working the shoulder and neck shaping. So I was going to have to rip out, I think I figured out I just had to rip the fronts out and do that shaping. The back was at a point where it was still okay because obviously you don't do front shaping on the back, you just do the shoulder shaping. So, and that's last on the back. But I just have not had the mental capacity to figure that out and figure out how to do that, and I just didn't want to be bothered. So I set that aside again. That's not going to be a finished object or a finished whip by the end of February. However, I did pull out a different sweater project, and that's my Ramona. So Ramona is a sweater that I started. Throw needles around here. I started this last January 2021, and Ramona is a cardigan pattern by Elizabeth Smith, and the yarn that I'm using is Briggs and Little Heritage, which is it's labeled as a worsted weight. I think it's almost an Aran weight. It's a very heavy worsted, and I'm doing it in this nice beautiful red. which I need to wind this skein to continue. Anyway, I think the number is 73 on that red. Anyway, last year when I was working on this, I made some pretty fast progress on the sweater itself, and then I got stuck on the sleeves. My first attempt at this first sleeve ended up being way too big, and then my second attempt at the sleeve ended up being way too tight. It's kind of like a Three Bears sort of situation, and so I was frustrated, and I just set it aside and never worked on it again until this past week. I decided I'm just going to pull it out and I'm going to make it work. I'm going to just get it done. And I'm happy to report I do have one sleeve finished. I just finished it this morning. Is it perfect? No. But this is once again going to be one of those projects where done is better than perfect because I will at least be able to wear it. So I ripped the sleeve out that I had started last year. I had never even done that. So I ripped that out and put the needles back in, and I started, and I'm not following the pattern at this point. I'm just winging it because I feel like I know enough how to knit a sleeve, and I just was going by that, and it worked out okay. So I realized whenever I messed it up the second time last year that I needed to go up in needle size to make my gauge bigger. And it's really funny. I was just watching Andrew Mallory's podcast this morning, the episode that came out today. And in that, she was talking about the fact that small circumferences, like on sleeves, almost always end up being tighter, even on the same size needle as the rest of the garment was knit. Like the larger part of the garment, you're probably going to get a different gauge than what you do on a sleeve, if you're, especially if you're working it in the round, which I was doing. And that was exactly what had happened the second time. So I had gone, I think I was either using, my notes say I did this sweater on a US 6. I feel like maybe I used a 7, but I don't know for sure. At any rate, I was using way too small of a needle for the sleeve because the fabric was just so tight, and there was a very visible line from here where the yoke part of the sleeve, the top down part of the sleeve ended, and the sleeve stitches picked up. Very noticeable. So I went up to an 8, and this actually worked out pretty well. Now these stitches here are really wonky because I did not soak my yarn after I ripped it out. I just started knitting with it again, and I don't care because whenever I soak it, it'll all even out. And again, done is better than perfect. I'm fine with that. However, I'm trying to think. Oh, when I started this, I just had it on one of my interchangeable cables. So here's the other sleeve, and that's what I use to hold sleeve stitches when I'm doing top-down sweaters. I just put these interchangeable cables on there. Then when I'm ready to work on it, I can put my short tip needles on and start the knitting, which is fine when you're first starting the knitting. But after you start doing sleeve decreases, or at least in this case, after I started doing the sleeve decreases, the cable wasn't short enough, and I was kind of stretching my stitches more than I should have been. And that is, I think, the other reason why these stitches at the top of the sleeve look a little loose and wonky compared to when you see like right about here. This is when I switched from using one small circular to using 2 circulars, and having half of the stitches on each of the circulars. That worked better, and my gauge definitely got much more regular, and my stitches are a little smaller than they were up here, but not in that overly different way that they were originally. I think the gauge on the sleeve is actually a little tighter still than the sweater, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So it took me 2 days, basically, I think, to knit the sleeve. This is weird because I've just got a lot of pins in here that are, bulb markers just marking my decreases. I started doing decreases, like I picked up the stitches, I picked up my underarm stitches, and then I did the first round I knit, I did my underarm decreases immediately. Then I did a straight round, then I did another set of decreases right away. And after that, then I did like 8 rounds, and then a decrease, 8 rounds, then a decrease. And then I tried it on and it fit really nicely. It was not too snug, it wasn't too open and roomy, and I also didn't feel like I had a whole lot of extra fabric right here. You know what? I'll try it on for you and show you what it looks like. Okay, this is not laying great just because I'm sitting here and it's all wonky and it's going to need to be blocked. But anyway, here, if I stand like this, you can see how it's like. I mean, it's got a little bit of extra fabric here, but not nearly as bad as it had the first time I did the sleeve. It was so big, it was just ridiculous. And then last time it was like skin tight. So I'm really happy with this sleeve. And so that was all the decreasing I did. And I figured maybe once I got down to the elbow, I would need to start doing more decreases. However, I was working on it last night while my husband and I were watching a virtual tour of the Grand Canyon area on Zoom. Anyway, we were watching that and I was knitting away on my sleeve, and I did keep trying it on every now and then, and it felt okay. And I thought, you know what, I might not actually even need to do decreases before the cuff. So I knit as far down as I needed to go, and I figured I'll do the cuff in the morning. And so I started this morning doing the cuff, and I realized the cuff was going to be gigantic. So I thought, no, that's not going to work. So I ripped back to here, yeah. About the last 3 inches of what I had knit last night. I ripped that out, and then I started doing a fairly rapid decrease. I think it was once every 5th round I was doing decreases, and I did 6 decreases, which actually tapered it really nicely. So it's still roomy. I just didn't want the sleeve to be too tight that I couldn't wear like a long sleeved shirt underneath it and feel like it was all bunched up and uncomfortable, and I think it'll be fine. And so I did 1 by 1 ribbing here at the cuff, and it hits in a perfect place. Now I know that'll probably adjust a little bit. Let's see, can I show you? Yeah, I can't really, here. It hits right about there. I'm standing weird, so I don't know how accurate that is. But once the button band's on and the other sleeve's on, I know it'll adjust a little bit where it's going to hit. But overall, I'm super happy with this. So I have all my decreases marked with markers, so hopefully when I do this second sleeve, I will be able to replicate it well. Yeah, so fingers crossed. It's the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th. I have 3 more days, including today, that I think I can probably get this finished. I mean, the knitting, it will not be blocked, ends may not be woven in, and it probably will not have buttons on it. But the knitting portion of this sweater, I really am hopeful that I can get finished before the end of the month. I would love to do that. I mean, this is an arbitrary goal because nobody's, forcing me to do that. But since I was really trying to get some good whips done, I don't feel like I got as many long-term whips finished in these 2 months as I would have liked to have. But again, it's fine. Anyway, I'm hopeful that this will be done soon. I will say, however, this yarn is heavy. Like I said, it's a heavy worsted weight. And it's also, it's not superwash. It's a non-superwash yarn, which is nice. I like that. But it picks up everything. And in this bright color, boy, you can see just about every fuzzy and every fleck of anything that sticks to it. Cat hair, oh yeah, you can see it. My hair, this crazy curly gray hair, I shed as much as the cats, I think. And so I'm constantly picking this hair off. So that might be a challenge, keeping this sweater looking nice, just from the things that are probably going to stick to it. But I wanted a red sweater. And what's really funny is I originally wanted a red sweater to wear with a dress that I have. And I don't think this sweater is going to go with that dress very well at all because it's a very lightweight dress. And this is a pretty heavy sweater, so I don't know, and I don't wear the dress that often anyway. But it'll be a nice new sweater in my wardrobe because I'll tell you what, I wear the same sweaters all the time. My antler cardigan I wear constantly. I figure my husband's probably so tired of seeing me in that sweater. And after this winter that I'm, playing with the fireplace all the time, it's gotten dirt and soot and ashes all over it. It really is in need of a bath and a depilling. So I've actually started to wear my my hero cardigan, my Icelandic cardigan, a little more often, which is nice. That certainly doesn't show the dirt like the antler cardigan does, but it's also getting kind of pilly. So, because that's the one thing about Let Lopey, if you don't knit it at a super tight gauge, it definitely does pill up, and my hero was not knit at a super tight gauge. But at least I'm getting wear out of it. I think I'm going to do a special episode and talk about some of my most worn knits from this winter, because it's been a winter where I could wear a lot of knits, and I've used a lot of knits, you know, when we're working outside and doing stuff. So I might do a special episode on that. I've been thinking about that. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm gonna take this off because, again, did I mention it's 76 degrees in here? Yeah, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back in something that's less warm. My next item is actually a mostly finished object, but it's a weaving project. A couple weeks ago, I decided I was going to warp my loom, my small one, my Ashford 10-inch sample-it loom, and I was going to do what will either end up being a scarf or one of the fringy cowls that I make. I haven't decided how I'm going to finish it yet, but it's actually, the weaving part is done. So here it is. The light is kind of blowing the colors out in here. Yeah, but take note of like these really bright pops of color. I absolutely loved when they crossed because I used two different yarns in both the warp and the weft and was alternating them every four, like there was 4 strands alternating across the warp and then 4 passes in the weft of each, and I really love the subtle checkered pattern that came out of that. So the 2 yarns that I used are actually both yarn. These are great stash. This was a really good stash project because both of these yarns are ones that I've had in stash for several years a piece, and I've started, at least the one I know I had started a couple projects with, and I just never was happy with how they were turning out, so it kept getting ripped out. And yeah, but they were, I have a pile basically of yarns like that, like ones that I've just had forever that I just haven't been able to get to work in projects, and it's like I want to use them or I want to rehome them, one or the other. But these two were sitting right next to each other in that pot. I'm like, they look great together. Now this one has silk in it, so it's really shiny in this light, but the colors are really, really similar. They both have sort of a grayish base to them with these really pretty pastel colors in them. This one though is much brighter. This one is much softer and pastel. So the one on the bottom with the silk, this is some Sweet Sparrow yarns. This is her Hummingbird base, which is a 50-50 merino silk. And the colorway is Wisteria. I'm pretty sure I got this in a club shipment one time. I was in one of her clubs a long time ago. And I got it, and it was one where you got a different base every time. And I'm not a huge fan of silk blends like this, at least not ones that have this high a content of silk. That's not my personal favorite kind of thing to knit with. So I never knew what to do with it. So that one actually had not been used. This one, however, this is a skein of undead yarn. Undead yarn in her Vampiri base, and the colorway was Monster High Self-Striping. So that was also really cool because I've never woven with a self-striping before, and even though this was just 2 stripes, it was sort of a solid, like a light gray and then a speckled stripe. I think it was, that's how it turned out. That's how it looked to me when I was working with it anyway. It was really interesting to see it work through the warp or the weft that way. It wasn't quite as evident in the warp because to do get those 4 strands in the warp, it basically used yarn from both stripes. But in the weft, you could definitely see the difference. So that was a lot of fun. And like I said, when you saw those, like those really deep blue and pinks and stuff, you could see them cross in certain places. I just love that. So anyway, these are the yarns I used for this scarf. I'm sad that I was not able to use more of the yarn, and I would have been able to had I remembered to move my table back before I did my warp. I direct warp on that loom, so I'm not using a warping board or anything. I directly warp onto the loom. And usually what I do is I push my dining room table back as far as I can towards the wall, and then I warp from there, the far side of the table, over to the counter where I have my warping peg secured. And that usually gives me a nice long warp. And had I done that, I think I probably would have used almost all of the yarn, but I totally forgot to do that. So my warp was probably about 18 inches shorter than it would have normally been. It's still a nice long scarf. I want to say it's at least my wingspan. I'm 64 inches tall. I think it's a little longer than that. So it is long enough that I could do, seam it up to do a fringy cowl. But because it's got this yarn with the silk in it, it also has a lot of really nice drape to it. So it might be nice to just leave it as a scarf. Either way, I'm not going to be keeping it. I'm going to be adding it to my shop because that's one of my goals for this year, is to start adding woven projects, like finished woven projects, to the shop. I don't know how much interest there will be in those, but I figure far fewer people weave than knit or spin, and so it may be something that people might like, especially for gift items. So I don't know, but that's what's going to happen with that once I finish it off, finish the fringe, and decide whether I'm going to seam it into the cowl or not. If you have an opinion on that, let me know. I would love to know, like, from a prospective person who would be possibly want to buy a woven item. Like, would you rather it be a scarf? Would you rather it be like a scarf with the option to have it turned into a cowl before it's shipped? Or maybe I could find a way to attach like buttons and button loops so that you could wear it either way. That might be something. I don't know. I would love to hear any feedback you might have on that topic if you feel like chiming in. Okay. Whoops, I'm bumping the doors behind me. All right. Those are all of my whips, except I did start a spinning project this week. It was kind of spur of the moment. I just decided, you know what, I feel like spinning, and my sidekick has still been sitting out in the in the dining room, and so I went in my fiber stash and I pulled out one of my loop bullseye bumps. I forgot to take a picture of it before I started spinning it, so I can't really show it to you. I will try to take a picture of it and the spinning and put it in here if I'm able to before I put this up. But if you're not familiar with what loop bullseye bumps are, they're basically like center pull bats. They're very thin, like thin roving. It's not quite pencil roving, but it's very thin, and it's wound in such a way that you just pull it from the center and that fiber comes out, and you really don't have to do any pre-drafting, at least I don't. And then you can just spin it. I can't remember what her name is. The woman who does loop. I almost want to say maybe her name is Lisa. You would think I would know that or remember that. Anyway, she makes beautiful, beautiful things. And I was a huge, huge fan of those loop bullseye bumps. I'm sure she still makes them. I'm not on her mailing list or anything anymore. Maybe she doesn't send out newsletters. I don't know. Yeah, I used to buy a lot of those, and it got kind of crazy because I always wanted to do them as chain plies once I would spin them, and I got to the point where I got tired of doing that because then you're left with a big long gradient, which is nice, but I wasn't knitting. I got to the point where I just wasn't knitting a lot of stuff with gradients anymore. So anyway, I do have some of that yarn left in my stash, hand spun, that I will use eventually. But this one I am gonna spin, and I don't know if I'm gonna chain ply it or not though, because some of the last ones that I spun I just left as singles, and then I kind of felted them a little bit. you know, put them in hot water and agitated them with a little bit of soap and just felted them. And though I don't know that I've knit with any of those yet though, but it turned out to be sort of like a Manis del Uruguay yarn type of feel. I think Manis is the one I'm thinking of. I don't remember. Anyway, I'm enjoying the spin. I can tell though, I think it's been compacted a little bit from being in my stash for so long, because I am having a little bit of an issue pulling it out from the center and getting it to draft as I'm plying. And I don't remember having that problem with them before. So I think it's just the fact that it's been in my stash for quite a few years. And fiber does not always hold up unless it's kept in a way that it's not being compacted. So anyway, but that's my spinning project that I'm working on right now. Upcoming, as far as projects go though, I pulled my March bag that will be my March stash challenge. And I do know what's in here because I was going to hold off and wait and open it on the podcast. But then I thought, no, I'd like to know what it is so I can try to find a pattern to go with it, so that I'll be ready to start. So this isn't me doing a big reveal because I do know what's in it. But it was really ironic that this is what was in this bag, because this was a loop bullseye bump that I spun and then chain plied. And I believe I did this back in 2018. It's 2017, 2018, because I do actually have notes about this. This turned out to be about 215 yards of a worsted weight. It's a little over, there's areas where I think it's a little overplied maybe, but, and I think it's going to be a little heavier than a worsted weight actually. But I did start looking through patterns that I have either in my queue or in my library on Ravelry, and I did end up with one that I think will be a really good fit for this, because it's a project that if I run out of yarn before the end of it, it won't be a big deal. And it's called the Infinitude Scarf by Jenny Chase. So here's the pattern, and obviously it's just a big infinity scarf. This was published quite a while ago. I think it was in 2011 that this pattern came out, and it's been in my queue for a while. So it's knit in the round, and there's two different sizes, and I have just under the amount of yardage that's called for the smaller size. The smaller size loops twice. The larger size is supposed to loop 3 times. I don't need it to loop 3 times. But anyway, you start, let's see, can you even see it on here? Not super well. If you go and look at I'll try to, maybe I can put a good picture of it in here. I don't know. But if not, basically what you do is you start by doing some ribbing, like a section of ribbing around the whole circumference of it, and then you start doing like horizontal ribbing. So you're doing like 4 rows of knit stitches, and then you're going to do 4 rows of purl stitches. I don't know if I'll do that. I don't mind purling, but purling over that many stitches, I may just like do a turn, like a wrap and turn, and go back the other way and knit. I don't know. We'll see how lazy I'm feeling. But anyway, you just do that, and you do that, I don't know how many repeats, and then you bind off. And so I figure if I don't have enough to do all of the repeats, I'll just bind off whenever I get to the point where I can bind off. And I think it'll be fine. I think that'll be a really nice use of this, and I think it'll show the gradient really well. There's a little bit of sparkle in there. The color was called Dune from my notes. Let's see, do I have that written in here? Yes, it was Merino, Corriedale Nylon, and Angelina. And my notes say I got 215 yards. Chances are I have actually a little less yardage than that, because I don't think I used to calculate my hand spun yardage quite accurately. So I may end up just casting on fewer stitches. We'll see. I don't know. But that's my plan right now, is to do this cowl, because I think it'll be fun. And I wear cowls a lot. So that will be my March stash challenge. And I am throwing things all over the floor today, just so you know. All right, so that brings to an end everything that I have worked on in the last couple of weeks. And that takes us to the 2020 Make It Your Own MAL, which is about to start. It starts on March 1st. So if you have not signed up yet with your theme, you are welcome to still do that. Matter of fact, I have decided that I'm going to modify that part of the rules a little bit, and you can, well, as I said before, I think last time, you can submit your themes at any point in time for like future quarters of the make along. There's 4 quarters in it, but once the quarter starts, whatever your final one was that you had submitted for that quarter, that's the one we'll go by. However, if there's people who decide after the quarter has started that they want to participate, or maybe just heard about it, I'm going to let them submit their theme for that quarter at that whatever point in time. Now, once you do your first quarter, you do need to get the other ones in on time. But, you know, I'm just trying to be as flexible as I can be. And actually, it's really mainly for the prizes that you need to even submit the forms. Submit the theme form and then submit finished object forms. You are welcome to take part in the make along without submitting forms, and if you're not worried about, you know, whether you can win a finished object prize or what, you can probably, if you haven't submitted a theme form and you want to be part of the chatter, you're more than welcome. I just want this to be something fun, but it would be nice if you at least had a theme in mind, whether you officially submitted it or not. But if you want to be in line for either the finished object prizes or the full year Fiber Nymph Dye Works yarn fiber related prizes, those you do actually have to follow the whole guidelines with submitting your theme on time and submitting the finished object forms for everything, and, you know, having everything work within the dates that are prescribed in the guidelines, which I will link in the show notes, or I will link in the drop down menu, and they will be in the show notes as far as where you can find the guidelines for the make along, both on Ravelry and on the Fiber Nymph Dye Works blog. So they're both places, so they're accessible to everybody. If you aren't able to access Ravelry and the chatter thread that's there and post your pictures and things, you are welcome to post on Instagram. And I can't remember if I put a hashtag in the guidelines or not. I feel like maybe I didn't, but let's make the hashtag, what shall we make the hashtag? 90K MIYO MAL. 90K MIYO MAL. I have to write that down so that I remember to put that in the thing. And I will try to do quarterly, for the people who are using the hashtag on Instagram, I will do a drawing there too each quarter. So there will be a drawing there, there will be a drawing in the chatter thread, and there will be finished object drawings. So 3 drawings each quarter. I think that's how it's going to work. Okay, what else is happening? The whips thread is still active, and that's just active in the Ravelry group. Even though our January, February whip focused is like the period of time is coming to an end, if you're still working on whips, feel free to continue to chatter in there if you would like to. There's also a general chatter thread in the group that you're welcome to use at any time. And I mentioned earlier that I'm going to do an extra, like a, you know, an extra video, extra content video about my most used knits this winter, because I have been thinking, wow, I've really gotten a lot of use out of, you know, XYZ. So I thought I would do a short video just to share that, because I think that's kind of fun. And I have ideas for a lot of other extra content that I would like to do coming up. This is something that I've kind of been trying to organize and think about for a couple of years, to be honest with you. And it's morphed over these couple of years also because externally things have changed. But I do have some plans that will involve a YouTube channel membership. that will not change anything at all about the regular podcasts. I'm still going to be doing my regular podcast episodes that'll be, available to everybody. But by adding a really low cost membership option, it's just a way, if you enjoy the podcast and you would like to help support the channel, it would be a way for you to do that, because I know not everyone, is able to purchase yarn regularly and everything, and mainly, my business does support this channel. It always has. But if you're someone who can't buy the yarn or isn't interested in self-striping yarn, but you still enjoy the podcast, that will be an option for you if you would like to support the podcast just in that small way. I would really appreciate it. It's not active yet. I'm still getting the details finalized and approved by YouTube and stuff like that. But hopefully by the next time I record, that'll be an option. I'm also working on putting together a Patreon that will not only support this channel, it will also support my other website that's coming up, as well as have a lot more benefit offerings. But that's something totally different, and I will talk about that more in the future once that's all set up. But I just thought I'd let you know that that's out there. I think I did mention earlier this year, I have things that I want to do that I haven't been able to implement. And after doing the same thing for 11 years now, because the podcast did hit its 11-year anniversary in January, I still enjoy doing it, but I'd like to be able to take things in different directions too, just to keep it interesting for me and meet me better where I'm at in my own crafting life. Because even though I am a huge knitter and spinner and new weaver and things like that, like, I enjoy doing other things too, and I'd like to have a way to share that with you guys without having it be something that's right in the middle of like a regular podcast that like everybody isn't necessarily going to be interested in. So hopefully that makes sense. But stay tuned, because I will have more information about that as it is available. Let's see. Okay, we're going to move on to shop news now. I did do a Throwback Thursday update, very small Throwback Thursday update last night, and there's still a bunch of yarn in the shop from that. I was originally going to do one last Thursday and then one this Thursday. However, because of the aforementioned plumbing issues that we had, I wasn't able to get last week's up. So I just merged the two together. So the first, with anniversary season coming up, and by the way, if you placed a pre-order for this year's anniversary color, the Follow Your Path colorway, thank you so much. I'm working on getting those dyed up so I can get those shipped out. And the pre-orders are closed now, but that colorway will be in the shop at the end of March, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I thought this was a great time to do Throwback Thursday updates and offer up some of my past anniversary colorways. So the first anniversary colorway I ever did was for my 6th anniversary. Don't ask me why I never thought to do anniversary colorways prior to that point, but this was the very first one I ever put together, and it's called Never Not Color, and it was from 2017, I believe. Yeah, that would have been my 6th anniversary. So Never Not Color is up in the shop right now, and that's just a little sample. I never actually knit a sample of it back in the day. I think I just put it together with Photoshop. That's on Bounce. This is what it looks like on Mountain Tweed, so it's a little bit more subdued. And then I also put up the 2018 anniversary colorway, which was the 7th year, and that's called 7th Year Stitch. And this is the yarn. You will see in the listing that this is listed at, here's a picture of what it looks like knit up. Now, the difference between that picture and this yarn is there's 2 different batches that I dyed, and one of the batches looks like that, with the dark Merlot and eggplant stripes. The other batch, the Merlot and eggplant stripes, turned out a little bit lighter, and it was enough of a difference that I wanted to list them separately. So you will see that you can either choose the light or the dark version of this colorway. So they're both up in there. And the one that it turned out lighter, I did discount just a wee little bit because it's not exactly right. But anyway, those are up in the shop now. So if you want to pop over there and check those out, you can. And let me move this stuff out my lap. So that's up there now, and I just want to give you kind of a heads up as to what else is going to be happening in the shop between now and over the next month. I just feel like it might be easier so that you can know. The next regular shop update will be on Saturday, March 5th at 10 a.m. So that's not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow. I will be posting on social media, and it'll be in the newsletter what's going to be in there, so you can check those out. There will not be this year's anniversary color in this update, though. That's not till the end of the month. After that, there will be an update on March 14th, which is Pi Day, and that day I will be releasing the 2022 Pi Day colorway, which I will be podcasting before that so I can introduce it to you then. But if you're a fan of my Pi Day colorways, you won't want to miss that update. And there will be other yarn in that update as well, but it will be featuring the 2022 Pi Day colorway. After that, there on Friday, March 25th, that will be the next regular shop update after the Pi Day update, and that will actually be the one where the anniversary colorway will be in the shop, which means if you ordered a pre-ordered version of it, that'll all have shipped out at least, well, it'll be shipped out by the 15th, I think was the ship date I put on the pre-orders for the anniversary colorway, but that will be when it goes into the general shop and ready to ship, along again with other colorways. So that's the updates and stuff that'll be going on between now and then. I may throw in another Throwback Thursday update between now and then if I have the time. If I don't, then I won't. But again, the newsletter and social media like Instagram, the Fiber Nymph Dye Works channel on Instagram, or feed, whatever you call them. That's the best way to find out what's going on in the shop. And lastly, I just want to give you a heads up for my 2022 holiday countdown collections. Last year I did my pre-orders in June, which is I prefer to do them in the summer. However, after last year and experiencing the supply chain issue and not even knowing if I was going to be able to get all of the minis in that I needed, and having some of them come down to the wire, I think literally the one kind of minis that I wasn't going to offer because I didn't think I could get them. I think they came in like within a day or two before I was going to release the pre-orders for that. It was crazy. Anyway, I'm going to do my pre-orders for the 2022 holiday countdown collections earlier this year. I'm aiming for early April. So just putting that out there for you if it's something that you know you're going to want to do, and if it's something that you need to budget for or what have you, just know that I'm going to be putting the pre-orders up for those in April. I'm going to leave them open longer though than I have done in the past. Usually I have them up for the month of June and then I close them and they're done. I'm planning to have these up at least through April and May, maybe longer. It all depends on, what I can get in and know that I have. It's just, I'm just trying to make it as accessible as possible and make it early enough that I am sure I can get in the yarn that I need to fulfill the orders for them. So I will definitely have more details about that as that time gets closer. But I just wanted to give you the heads up if that's something that you might be interested in so that you can start planning for that or looking forward to it or however you would like to look at it. All right, we're going to go into 10% or what's bringing me joy this week now. Obviously, my biggest point of joy is the fact that our septic system is working well again, and we are now able to use it for all of our functions, bodily and otherwise. Life in the country. If you've never had a septic tank and a leach field and stuff like that, then you probably don't quite get it. And that's okay, because if you're on public septic, I think, or public sewage, it's probably way easier when this stuff happens. But let me just say, I have never lived anywhere where I had public sewage. I've always lived in the country where there's been septic. When it works great. When it doesn't work, not fun. So anyway, but it's bringing me joy that it's working now and life is back to normal. at least in that respect. I had my 6-month checkup the other day at my doctor's and blood work and everything, and I'm happy to report everything was great. My cholesterol is still a little borderline high, but it's actually come down over the past couple years since I quit eating meat, which does not always happen for everybody who stops eating meat, but for me it did have an effect, and which is great because that was the main reason I quit eating meat. I still eat seafood, but I do not eat any other kind of meat, and for whatever reason that seems to be helping me, so yay. What else? Oh, something really exciting that I'm looking forward to, and it's totally outside of the realm of anything fiber related. I'm going to be starting a 9-month-long herbalism course. It's an online course. The sign-ups for it I know are closed because I think all the spots are full, but it's through Spirit House Botanicals, which I've purchased things from her for a couple of years now, and I really admire her business practices, her transparency. I'll leave a link to her shop so you can check it out if you're interested. But I'm really looking forward to doing this course because I want my personal garden that Emma and I do, we really want it to become more herbal based, not so much vegetables, just because herbs are what we want to focus on. And so I am looking forward to doing this coursework. So I'm sure you'll hear a little bit about it here and there maybe. But yeah, that's starting up soon. So I'm really looking forward to that. Something totally different. So anyway, all right, I think that is everything I wanted to talk to you about. And again, I just feel really excited about new things coming down the pike, whether it's this course or some changes that I'm making to the channel to add new things to it. And those new things will also, I want to involve not just a bigger variety of things to talk to you about, but also more interactive content. So like YouTube lives, Zooms, things like that. Yeah, I'm so looking forward to going into some new directions. And I'm just trying to do it in a really organized fashion so I don't overwhelm myself or bite off more than I can chew. That's what's really important to me right now. So anyway, I hope you are having a good week. I know, again, it's been a really crazy, stressful week in so many ways, especially on the global front. I would just encourage you to step away from the news if you need to, for the sake of your own mental health. I know I have to do that occasionally, and just remember to breathe. It's going to be okay. We can get through this, no matter what it is you're going through. We're going to be okay. Take care, my friends, and I will talk to you again in another week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. So we'll see you soon. Bye.